Documents, Mkwebane is accused of deliberately using her investigations into apartheid-era looting to go after the Reserve Bank. Let's dissect this development further. We're joined by the reporter Karen Morn, who's been following the story. Karen, thanks so much for coming in. There's so much news on the go right now.
Crazy.
And so much legalese flying left, right and centre, from KZN to Pretoria and now this. Let's take our viewers' hands and explain to them, just remind us again, what was the finding of that CX report and what has happened since then?
Remember, the CX report was essentially an investigation began by Thuli Madonsela into so-called apartheid-era looting, and specifically a bailout that was given to Bancorp, subsequently taken over by ABSA. In effect, what happened was the Reserve Bank gave them a kind of sweetheart deal that allowed them to use interest off bank bonds to pay off all their bad debts, essentially on the version of the Reserve Bank at that time, saving them from a potential economic recession, because at that stage the world was globally turning away from South Africa and economic sanctions were being put in place, etc., etc., etc. There were many investigations into this. Judge Dennis Davis there was finding that this was completely financially irregular, legally inappropriate, etc., etc. But the real question is, what do you do? Now, Dennis Davis said that it wasn't in fact ABSA who benefited from that sweetheart deal, that it was Sanlam shareholders, and that to go after those people would have been a mistake. It wasn't really a practical solution to it. Fast forward to now, the public protector gives this quite hard-hitting report in which she says ABSA must pay back this 1.5 billion in interest. Goes further and says, there must be an SIU investigation, there must be an attempt to recover money of other kind of apartheid-era bailouts, and then most centrally, and what sent the South African rand tanking by over 2% at the time, she says the mandate of the Reserve Bank must be changed by the Constitution so that it is no longer about protecting the rand, it's about improving the socio-economic circumstances of ordinary South Africans. She admits she made a terrible mistake. It was the wrong thing. She overstepped the mark. The High Court has pronounced on it, made some very unfavorable comments about her conduct in this case. It's now emerging in a more substantive review of her report because, of course, ABSA and the Reserve Bank want that whole report set aside. They say it's fundamentally wrong all over the place. She's misconstrued things. They're now saying that her own minutes, the Section 53 record of this case, reveals that she had meetings that she did not disclose with the presidency 12 days prior to this report being released, that this very controversial relief of the Reserve Bank's mandate being changed, which had such unfortunate consequences for an economy that we know is already very beleaguered, was in fact the presidency knew about it. It was openly discussed. And the Reserve Bank is, I would argue, rightly saying this is radically inappropriate. How can you have a public protector disclosing this kind of thing to presidency? It really raises questions of her independence. And they've gone further. They've said there's clearly an ulterior purpose. She utilized the CX report to essentially put cast doubt on the credibility of the Reserve Bank in an environment where we know there is this antagonism seemingly between the banks and commercial interests and government.
So what exactly did the Reserve Bank find, and what are they going to do with this piece of information now?
Well, you see, there's a substantive review of the Public Protector's report, and they've gone further. They've said the reason we're now seeking this review is we have clear evidence based on this Rule 53 record, according to us, that the Public Protector was not acting without fear or favour. She was acting with an ulterior purpose. She was acting with a very deliberate interest. Also, very concerningly, she met with the State Security Agency. Key things here is that, in the terms of a Rule 53 record, when the Public Protector is taken on review, there must be transcripts of the interviews and the meetings that she has. There's no transcript of the presidency meeting, and the Reserve Bank is saying we want that transcript, and if you didn't record it, why didn't you record it? The Public Protector's Office always records all interviews. There's a note contained in minutes, what appeared to be minutes for that meeting with the State Security Agency, in which this question is scrawled out in relation to the Reserve Bank. It appears, how are they vulnerable?
Yeah. And what would that be? What would that pertain to?
I mean, what the Reserve Bank has said is we want the transcripts and we want an explanation from you about this. because clearly we are very concerned. We invite you to give us the full transcript in your reply to this supplementary affidavit. We invite you to explain what happened here. But this is immensely serious, and I think that we can't underestimate the kind of crisis of leadership that this will bring for the public protector. I mean, just last week I spoke to her and she was saying that she intends to sue the DA for their ongoing claims that she's a spy, but certainly secret, so-called secret meetings with state security agency, I mean, it really does not look very good. And when we think about the kind of landscape into which that Reserve Bank report was released, where there was this very profound antagonism between you know, the government and sort of commercial interests and the banks, and the fight with the Guptas, you know, this whole thing does not paint a very good picture.
What this certainly darkens an ever-growing cloud over the office of the public protector, and not just Mkwebane herself.
I mean, it's very problematic. I mean, I spoke to her last week and she was saying that in the wake of the ABSA CX report, she'd received death threats, people had broken her property. You know, I think that it's really going to be an opportunity for her when she files this replying report that she discloses what exactly happened here. But you know, the public protector's processes are extremely open. Yes, you do have situations where material is not annexed, you know, it's not readily available because of confidentiality issues. For whatever reason, she waived confidentiality in terms of these particular reports. Maybe she didn't realize how serious they were. Perhaps she didn't know what a kind of impact they would have. But I mean, we now know from those records, confirmation that she was essentially getting advice from a Holocaust denialist who praised Adolf Hitler and Verwoerd. And I mean, this, you know, it's absolutely staggering, and one would really hope that she gives a proper account for what happened here, because if she can't, it's going to make the reputation and the kind of strength of credibility of her office severely dented. And I think presidency also needs to answer. I don't think we'll ever get answers from state security because, you know, they refuse, you know, within the veils of intelligence to ever be accountable in any kind of substantive way. But certainly presidency needs to come to the party and say, well, why did we go along with this? Why were we even in that meeting? We have this extraordinary situation where the finance minister, Malusi Gigaba, took this report on in court and said that this was deeply misguided. She had not got the mandate. So what is this saying about what is happening within our government, that the finance minister will go to court and attack a report that essentially appears to have had the engagement of presidency's own legal advisors and their support? This issue has the potential to implode these kind of factions within government, because it's clear that there were a particular group of people serving a particular agenda with a particular interest, and there may well be a case, according to what the Reserve Bank is making here, that this was pursued for, as they put it, an ulterior purpose.
Just very quickly before you go, what happens next now?
Well, the public protector has an opportunity to now file an affidavit in response to this, which she will have to do. You know, if she substantively disputes what's being said, or it becomes an issue where there's multiple versions of what exactly occurred here, there is a potential that there may be oral evidence in this case, depending on what the court decides. But certainly the ball is now in her court, and she needs to come and say, what exactly occurred here? Why didn't I provide transcripts of my meeting with the presidency? Why did I not disclose this in the report? Why was I even meeting with them in the first place? Because as the Reserve Bank points out, it is radically inappropriate for her to even have had this conversation with them in the first place.
Well, we'll leave it there for now. Our reporter Karen Morn bringing us the very latest further developments, casting even longer shadows over the report from the public protector, the CX report that she released a few months ago.